welcome to another episode of Side Part. I'm Nikki, your host, and today I have the absolute pleasure of having Nisha Tuli here on the podcast, Amazon Top 50 and International Bestseller, author of two of my personal favorite books, Fate of the Sun King and Trial of the Sun Queen, and Heart of Night and Fire. I said 3 books, not 2. I'm sorry. She just released a new book, which was the first one I mentioned, Fate of the Sun King, earlier this month. And when I tell you, it was gutting, but also one of the best books I've read all this year. I'm so incredibly excited to have you, Nisha. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. So excited to be here.
Just before we get started, I thought it'd be helpful if you kind of give us a brief background, how you got here, how you became a best-selling author.
Oh man, it's quite a story, actually.
I know, I had a feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a lot of people. COVID sort of changed everything for me. So I was working full time. I worked in marketing for many years. I was working for Travel Manitoba, which is sort of like the tourism board of the province where I live. I'm Canadian. And we were working from home, and like my kids suddenly didn't have activities, and my husband wasn't. He travels a lot for work, and he suddenly was home all the time. And like I had all this time I hadn't had in years. And I was like, you've always wanted to write a book. And I was reading a lot because it was a pandemic and there wasn't really much else one could do.
Exactly.
Right? So, and I just thought, I was reading more and more fantasy romance, which is what we were calling it then. And now we call it romantasy. I mean, that was 4 years ago. We weren't really calling it romantasy yet. But, and I just was like, yeah, this is what I think I want to write, because I like most authors, I was a big reader, and like I always wanted to write a book. And I had written like professionally for many years. Like I worked for magazines and newspapers and did marketing copy and that kind of thing, but I had never written fiction before, really. And that was sort of like always something I wanted to do. And I was like, you're not getting any younger, like now's your chance, like give it a shot. So like that summer, like almost exactly 4 years ago, I sat down and like I started writing Heart of Night and Fire. Was the first book I wrote. And originally it was a YA fantasy with some romance, and I don't know, a fire just lit under my ass, and I was just and it just like I went from there. And I didn't really know how to publish a book yet. So like I started looking into it, and I decided to query for an agent first. I thought didn't really know anything about, I didn't even really know indie publishing existed at that point, to be honest. Like I had just started sort of venturing into KU books and stuff. Like I really didn't know yet. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to try traditional publishing first. And I signed with my first agent in early 2021. And so once you sign with an agent, then they put your book on submission. So they're just like, they try to shop it out to editors at publishers. And that Heart of Night and Fire, like it sat on submission for 18 months, for a year and a half. And I was just like, oh my God. And the advice always is like, don't wait, just keep writing more books. So I was writing more books the whole time. I kept writing. We put a second book on submission, which was a rom-com that I put up, and it was on submission for a year. And I'm like, I am not waiting for someone else to tell me that I can publish a book. So, and at that point, romantasy was starting to take off in indie. Like it was starting to, and trad publishing was ignoring it. Like despite the like insane excess of like SJM and like Jennifer Armentrout, like they were ignoring it. They were not interested in that kind of fantasy. So I was like, okay, I think I'm going to try an indie publish. So I wrote a novella, which was Wicked as the Reaper, and I ended up publishing it, which ended up doing quite well. And I was like, okay, well, here we go. And then, I published To Wake a Kingdom, which was supposed to be a longer series, but so far has not gone anywhere yet because too many other things happened. And then I published Trial of the Sun Queen at the end of 2022. And it's like, did okay. And then it was like slowly started to pick up. And then right before Rule of the Aurora King came out, it just like blew up, and everything changed like overnight. It was just like, I could not believe it. I still cannot believe it. And then, so that started going really well. And then I had, in the meantime, my rom-com sold to Forever, actually 3 books to Forever Publishing. And that book is actually coming out next year. And then Heart of Night and Fire also sold to a publisher sort of like in the meantime. So like by this time last year, then I was starting to get reach outs from publishers, like foreign publishers. I had a UK publisher that was interested in Trial of the Sun Queen. They were like, wanted to buy world rights. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. Like, what am I going to do now? So I had my other agent, but she wasn't super like experienced. And so I went to her and I was like, look, I've been getting all this interest in this series. Like, I would like to go and like find a different agent who's more versed in adult fantasy. And she was very nice about it. She understood that she also was not the right person. So we parted ways. I ended up querying for 2.5 days, which, if you know anything about querying, is insane. Like, people query for years.
Wait, so you only queried for 2.5 days, not years? Days?
This time for 2.5 I started sending them on Friday, and by Sunday afternoon someone was like, can we talk? So
wow,
that was nice not to, because like it can take, and the first time it took many months, but yeah, so that was great. I ended up signing with Lauren, who's now my agent, and we put Trial of the Sun Queen up on submission because I had the vision, because Trad had started to pick up indie series that were doing really well, and like I know that's not the right choice for some people, but it's definitely what I wanted. So we put it on submission. It ended up going to auction, which is like every author's dream come true. And Forever, who was the same publisher who picked up my rom-coms, decided they also wanted to get into the romantasy game, because even my agent was like, well, we'll submit to your editor, Madeline. And I was like, but they don't do fantasy. She's like, it's just polite, we'll submit to them. I was like, okay, she's your editor. And they were like, no, we want to do fantasy, because now every publisher wants to get into romantasy, because now it's the hot thing, right? Like now they're all there.
For so long I feel like it was almost taboo, right? Like no one wanted to touch it.
So now like the reason, and I know the reason they're picking up already successful series is because they don't have to do all the groundwork. And you could argue that they're just like they're just piggybacking off these authors' hard work. And I mean, that's fine. Some people might say that. To me, this is what I wanted. A publisher, a big 5 publisher, can do things that I can never do on my own. My books are in every Target in the US now. Like, I could never have done that on my own.
And Walmart.
Like,
I don't know if you know that. They're at my local Walmart.
They're apparently in airports. I've yet to find one myself in an airport, but other people send me pictures. Like, yeah, they're everywhere. So like, those are the kinds of things an indie author just simply cannot do. So, I mean, there's a trade-off, right? So, and then, now, so Fate of the Sun King just came out, which was about, so, and then a year ago at this time, I then had 11 books under contract. All of a sudden, like, I was going, and then everything happened at once. So it's been insane. Like, I never, ever get a break. But we are now, I'm almost done Tale of the Heart Queen. I just have proof pages left to do. I'm working on the 3rd book for the other series.
I'm dying for this book, by the way. I cannot wait for it. I'm so incredibly excited. I'm actually devastated. I think that might be the right word.
I know. I guess really
there's going to be spoilers. We can't avoid it. But the end of that book, what were you doing to us?
I was really mean. It had to happen that way. You'll see. You'll see in book 4 why it had to happen that way.
I mean, I believe in Nadir. I believe there was a reason, but the cliffhanger, I'm like dying. I'm actually physically not okay.
I do love a good cliffhanger. And it's funny when people are reading book 1 and 2 and they're like, that was such a cliffhanger. I'm like, oh, wait till you get to book 3.
Okay, so that is true. After book 2, I was like, oh, like I wish there would have been more spice, but I didn't feel particularly like jilted. I feel awful right now. I'm not okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I forgive you.
I mean, I have like a stack of people's therapy. People's messages have been so funny. Like one woman, someone messaged me and they're like, I just finished it and I'm in a fucking coma now. And I was like, oh my God.
I mean, though, kind of, I always read late at night when my children are sleeping. And I just remember actually audibly being like, oh my God. Like, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And, I have 2 toddlers who are very easy to wake. And I'm like, but I was mad. I was like, I'm like on my Kindle, like, this cannot be the end. It was.
I know. And people I flipped the page and it's like acknowledgements. And I had someone like 2 weeks ago on TikTok, she tagged me and she was sobbing. And I was like, okay, this is the first time I actually feel a little bit bad. She was like genuinely sobbing. And I was like, I'm sorry. I promise. As I've been saying to everyone, I promise you will get a happy ending eventually.
Okay, that was my main question for you.
Absolutely. So, you'll always eventually get a happy ending from me, no matter how bad it gets.
I will hold out. I will forgive you as long as I know it's going to get better because like the hurt has to be worth it for me. It has to like heal a little bit.
No. I'm a romance author. You will always get a happy ending eventually.
Said it here first. All right.
Yeah,
good. Because I'm a little angry after that one. And then when I should have wrote this down. When does book 4 come out?
It will be November 26th. So
okay, so you have to wait that long this time.
No, not at all. Like 5 months. That's it. Which for Tribe Publishing is light speed. To get them both this year is Lightspeed. So for me too, that book almost killed me.
How long did it take you to write that book?
It's hard to say how long a book takes me to write, because like I write the first draft, and to me, my first drafts are just like a complete mess. Like I'm a pantser. I don't plot. I just write the story as I'm going. So when I finish my first draft, it's like unreadable to anybody but me. Right. So I don't, 90% of my process happens in editing. Like that's when my real work begins. So like you can write a book, but like it's far from done when I've written a book. Now I'm going to edit it at least 6 or 7 or 8 times before like it is finished. And like, that one, it's the longest book I've ever written. So, I mean, 165,000 words makes a big difference from writing 100,000 words. Like, that's a huge...
That's like 2 books.
Yeah, like, it's a big difference. And that was the longest book I've ever... And even for, like, fantasy, it's not even that long. Like, I tend to be on the short side, but...
I would say so, yeah. Yeah,
I don't know. To me, I just don't think I'd ever write a 200,000 word book. I think I would lose interest in it.
You know... I have mixed feelings on this. I truly do love longer books, but I have to be in the headspace for it because I truly lose steam.
I actually do not love longer books. I feel like a lot of books could be shorter and just aren't. And like I don't know, shortest attention span these days, like for me to stick with a book, I really need to be like...
Well, and I feel like it matters what the plot device is, right? So if the main plot device or theme or trope or whatever is miscommunication, I'm out. I cannot.
Well, I mean, so, those things. I actually don't mind.
For 200,000 words, it cannot be miscommunication that's holding this all together. It has to be more complex than that.
I really, nothing like that ever turns me off a book. Like generally, I'm like fine with whatever the story wants to be. I just like, to me, it needs to just hold my interest. Like that is when I DNF a book, it's because I'm just like bored and I don't care about the characters more than anything, right? Like that's sort of like, not really into it. But so I mean, it was a big difference writing that long a book, like, and I cried so many times writing that book. Like I've never cried writing a book before. That was just like, friend of mine who was beta reading for me, and she's like, this chapter, I'm like, you have no many times how I sobbed every time I went through that chapter. And it's not even that it was like so bad. It was just like saying goodbye to these characters and sort of like, because I'm wrapping things up now.
Yeah.
And it was like, they're like, these characters changed my whole life, right? So like they will always be they're going to be special to me for that reason. And I don't know. I cried a lot, and I hope people cry a lot too, because
in a good way though, right? Like not in the way of like I devastated you yet again, but in the way of like I hope you find some finality.
There'll be a few moments of devastation along the way, but like I said, we'll get there at the end. As my editor called it, she's like, this book is like walking over broken glass. It's like, it's very like, it's super fast paced. It is like we are racing to the end. You'll see. I think I'm happy with how it ended. It ended differently than I expected it to end. It wasn't exactly how I envisioned it. And it's funny because there was a thing that I put in book 2 that sort of was kind of a throwaway thing. I didn't know if I would do anything more with. It turned out to be sort of the whole catalyst for the end of book 4 in the end, in a way that I hadn't expected. So it was really fun to sort of be like, okay, this is all just fit together so perfectly. And I'm an accidental genius.
Isn't it the best? Well, and you touched on something earlier about your process. You're a pantser. And let me tell you, I don't know how else. I'm trying to write a novel as well. And I don't know how else to be other than to just pants my writing, because that's how I feel most creative. So how do you, as someone who has very little planning, how does this come together for you? Because I don't know if I can see that far.
Sometimes, I mean, I have a general sense of, and like by the time I got to book 3, when you read book 3, and if you go back and read book 2, you will see there are a lot of Easter eggs that I dropped in because I started to have a sense of where I wanted it to go. Originally, the series was going to be 3 books. When I finished writing book 2, I'm like, no, I'm not going to finish this in 3 books. I think I need to add a 4th one. So I added the 4th one. I added Fate of the Sun King. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's like completely going in blind, because like, even when I'm writing a first draft, I'll write like half the book. And then by the time I get halfway through it, I kind of know where I'm going to go for the ending. So then I might go back to the beginning and start like sort of fixing the parts that I've already written in order to get to that ending I think I now am at. And I don't know, somehow, like, I think from reading a lot, I have a sense of like story structure and like where I want to go. And I don't know, somehow this worked out. I mean, we'll see. Maybe I got lucky, but I definitely live in fear of writing myself into a corner. But like now we'll see with my other series, like as I'm finishing up book 3, I'm like trying to be like, okay, which are the things I need to make sure are correct? Or like the beauty of fantasy is you can use magic to explain away a lot of things too. Like,
any plot holes can be explained away with magic.
You said it was the truth in this book, you can find a reason that it's not the truth in this one if you need it to be so, right? Like
create a whole new magic system just to justify this one plot hole.
There's always a loophole if you look hard enough for it, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, for me, I need to be inside the story. I need to hear the characters talking to get really the sense of the story and where I'm going. Like I've tried to plot and it just does not come. Like I just sit there staring at a blank page. So I'm sure it makes for in my case very messy drafts and the necessity of a lot of editing. But I mean, it's just that's my process. And
well, and I think the thing that I appreciated the most was that Lauren Nadir's relationship did not feel forced. It wasn't something that felt like insta love, which I mean, I know when there's like the fated mate attraction, like that can come into play, but I really appreciated that this person who has gone through a lot of trauma, like was given the space to really develop these feelings rather than just plopping her into a relationship like she's full and ready, because she wasn't.
Yeah, I thought that was important. I think like some people were like, oh, she led him on, and like I was like, no, she didn't. Like he was the one who was pushing her the whole time, right? Until she was like, no, stop. And he was like, okay, I'm stopping. Like you come to me when you're ready, right? Like knowing that like you're meant to be for me, so I'm just going to give you some time. And I think like, yeah, she needs to work through things. And even like in book 3, she goes through a lot of growth, and in book 4 she does still some more, but like she hasn't actually had a chance just like sit down and process everything that happened, right? So there's still going to be like, even at the end of book 4, like it's sort of like, okay, we got through all this stuff and now I can finally like begin to heal, right? So yeah,
I really appreciated that though. I mean, especially so there was like this point in book 4 where I think she finally just declares her love, if you will, and decides she's going to go for him. And it felt like such a breath of fresh air because, man, was this the slowest of slow burns? But your dedication in the beginning was probably one of my favorite dedications I have ever read in a book. Like, I promise I finally let him do it in this one. And I you know, with a fantasy book, I truly feel like you don't see those sort of dedications too often. And I think that's what I appreciate you most about an author is you never lose the humor, and your summaries in the beginning of your books are top notch. Like I don't have to do a reread because your summaries are hilarious. And there's this humor laced within that I just truly haven't found with another author. And even switching gears a little bit, reading Heart of Night and Fire was like a breath of fresh air in the fantasy genre, because I think unfortunately we see a lot of the same things just rewritten in different ways, and they all start to blur together for me. No shade, I love fantasy, that's all I read most of the time, but it was nice being immersed in this world that just felt so different. And it was beautiful.
I mean, it's interesting because I get a lot of sort of comments from people like, oh, the names are hard and it's confusing, and there's a lot of characters on Heart of Night and Fire, and I feel like, you know, it's obviously like, oh, suddenly these are names people are not familiar with. I'm using clothing and food that are not what, you know, Americans and North Americans are used to. And so like people can be like, oh, and memorize Daenerys Targaryen, how many names are Aelin Gallianthus, like how many names she has. But
I still cannot pronounce her name, by the way. So,
but like the minute you attach it to brown people, like suddenly it's too hard to follow, right? So like there's a challenge in that respect. So like, I really enjoyed writing that series because I had to learn a lot too. Like I grew up in Canada. I didn't grow up next to my culture. And so like I got the opportunity to sort of like dive deep and learn a lot of things I didn't know about too. So it was really a fun exploration into that too. And you know, to do it justice and learn about it. But yeah, and I mean, I wanted that, but then with Trial of the Sun Queen, I wanted to also be like, you know what, she can also be a brown girl in this setting too, right? Like there's no rule that says just because it feels like European fantasy that there's no reason it's fantasy. It's not historical. I'm not basing it on anything other than whatever came out of my head. So I think they both sort of have their place in a way in the scope of fantasy, because there's not enough representation. It's all, a lot of it is still, very one note, especially when we look at the top of the bestseller lists. And I don't know, it's a constant thing, that's for sure.
Amazing though that you were able to, one, traditionally publish a book like this, because I feel like we need more books like this in the fantasy space that are not just indie published, but published by a bigger house, than getting that visibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I love indie publishing is great. And obviously there's lots of great things, but the reader who reads 200 KU books a year is not the same person who goes into Barnes and Noble 4 times a year. Right. And it's that audience that is the main, the bigger sort of, there's way more of those people. And so to get that sort of mainstream visibility, you do need to be in a bookstores, and you do need to be, it's a different sort of, it's just a different reach. It's a different kind of reach you're getting there.
Well, absolutely. And I just remember reading her story though, and the way you just painted this world with, from anywhere from the sights to the smells, and anyone who says that they cannot conceptualize or is too complicated, Kindle has this really awesome feature where you can highlight words and it does all the searching for you and gives you context.
We have these really handy things where you can find
it's
anything.
Amazing.
You can find out anything at the click of a button. Yeah.
Well, and I know this might be hard to talk about. Oh, go ahead.
If you have the context is there, right? Obviously, absolutely. I don't know. Anyways.
Well, let's just call a spade a spade. I think when things look different or not what we normally see, especially in North America, people have this aversion to it. And it's just rooted in this, this, I mean,
it's rooted in racism. We can say
absolutely.
Whatever.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to, it's just so frustrating, because if you just took a second and took a step back and kind of evaluated why it feels yucky to you. I mean, it says something more about you. Yeah.
Right. Why does this feel hard to you when you had no problem reading 12 books of Game of Thrones or however many books there are? Yeah. So I think but I mean, it's funny to me that some people are I've never had Indian food before. I'm how have you never had? But I'm if you live in a small town in middle America that doesn't have any, hi, sweetie. Sorry, my daughter's just.
Oh no, let her come on in. I have a almost 2-year-old and an almost 4-year-old, and so
wait till they're 12 and they eat everything. And you think toddlers are the messiest, but then suddenly you get a teenager and you come in the kitchen and you're what the hell happened here?
It's a different type of mess, right? Right now we're in the dumping of bin stage,
and
where
the crumbs go up to their room, and then every once in a while a whole thing of dishes comes down, and you're why do we have new cups left?
They're all under their bed. I guess that's my next question, is how do you balance this? Because obviously you have children and you have this, I mean, being a mom's hard. It's so hard. It's so consuming. How do you manage to do it all?
So when I first started writing, my son was 5. He was the youngest. And I'm always amazed at people who can have babies and do it, because I don't know that I could have. And I mean, I was working full time at the time. I write full time now. This is my job. So, and I've been full time for about 2 years. So I mean, she's in junior high and basically takes care of herself at this point. I'm in a bit of a different season at this point now too. And I mean, I will say, my husband is incredibly supportive. When I had to do development edits for Tale of the Heart Queen in 2 weeks, I said to my husband,
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah. And I said to my husband, I'm I am going to be here and I need you to do I can't. And he's okay. So he, cooked every meal and did all the kid things. I didn't raise a finger except to be sitting at my desk working. So obviously that makes a huge difference. And, I mean, I don't know. I have, I feel how do you do it all? I'm I have an incredibly unhealthy work-life balance. I don't know what else to say.
I mean, that's kind of the truth, though. I think I get asked a similar question, and it's not nearly as much as you're doing, trust me, but how do you have 2 little babies? I'm still in that growing my family stage. It's my husband has my children right now. I couldn't do this without a husband that was be willing to take them and entertain my very mom obsessed children.
Oh, God,
They literally have to physically leave the house, otherwise they'd probably be in here as well.
Yeah.
So
Oh man, yeah, babies are hard. I mean, I don't miss those days. I know people are like, you're gonna miss it when they're bigger. I'm like, I do not miss those days at all. Like, it was fun when it lasted. They were cute and everything, but I love this independent phase, and it's fun because they're so proud of me, and my son is so fun, cute. Like, you'd be like, Mom, when is Fate of the Sun King coming out? And he'll like keep track of everything and all the
that is
titles
so sweet.
and everything, and like
they're proud of you.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and
That's
like
He's so cute.
He knows they're inappropriate for a 9-year-old to read, and I'm like, maybe when you're older.
Much older, like 18, 19, maybe even later.
I don't know. My daughter was saying how like her friends were reading like Icebreaker and on like Twisted Games, and I was like, what? Like what? I was like, what? Okay. I mean, I read that stuff too, but like, yeah. I mean,
yes, but
I mean, you can have like spice and go like a little less intense than that, but all right, just.
I mean, Icebreaker
that's a very spicy book.
And I'm not anti-spice at all. Obviously, I think can really enhance books.
I'm talking about 12 and 13-year-olds here.
Like,
I was like, and I'm like, well, guess if that's what you're reading, you can read mine then, because mine's certainly not any spicier than that. Like, so.
Absolutely not. No.
So. Anyway, it's I mean, it is balanced. It's like sometimes I definitely feel like I'm like, I probably should not be working so much, but I'm trying to cultivate, like, I have these many contracts. I'm almost done the Artifacts one. I have one more book to write for Hard Night and Fire. The rom-coms will only be like one a year, so it won't be quite as intense as it's been. And next year I'm hoping I'm going to try and find a little bit more peace in between. I don't know. We'll see.
And you'll probably come out with a whole new series.
And also I keep dreaming of starting a dark romance pen name, like, on the side. So
I mean, that could be cool. I
know. I think it would be so much fun. Just write some like totally messed up.
I used to be a little bit scared to read dark romance. And I will admit there's certain things I just can't, for whatever reason, get into. But I just read, oh my gosh, what was it? Oh, Butcher and Blackbird, and I loved it.
Okay, so that one I love Bryn. She's so talented, but I read half a page. I cannot handle gore. Like, that is my...
Okay, the opening scene is rough.
I read the first page and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I wish I could, because I'm sure it's amazing, because I read one of her other books called Black Sheep, which has a similar kind of thing to it, but isn't quite as gory. So I was okay with that one, but I was like, I cannot do it. I wish I could that.
Well, I think that's an important message too, of sometimes a book's just not for you, but it doesn't make the book bad. Because I get a little bit bent out of,
she's so talented. And I was like, I just cannot handle maggots and dead bodies. Like, that is my line.
And then referring to them as orzo and ruining it forever.
I cannot. Like, I was like, oh man. Because I read one of her other books, and like, she's absolutely amazing, but I was like, oh my god. But it's like wonderful to see all of her success, and because she did something different, right? Like, she did something totally new that nobody had seen before. So
it's like Dexter and Boondock Saints, if they had like this baby, and it's amazing. I love it.
She did something no one had done before, and I think like that is very key to, like, I think that's one of the keys to success, is not necessarily doing something no one has done before, but like is yours, right? Like, when people are asking about Trial, I'm like, I wanted it to feel familiar, but like not the same as the book you've read. Like, I want it to feel like, yes, the books that you love in this genre, but I don't want it to feel the same as the books in the genre that you've read. So I think that's sort of a key.
Well, there's definitely were elements of your books that felt familiar, but that helped make it almost feel like instantly I was invested.
Well, you want them to be, right? Like, people want to read things that feel familiar, because you never finished a book and you thought to yourself, wow, I love that. I never want to read anything like that again, right? Like, nobody ever says that, right? So you want to have that same feelings, but you also don't want it to feel the same, right? Like you were like saying with Heart, Night and Fire, like, I think it's, because it feels, the aesthetic is completely different than 98% of the books that are out there, right? Like, it's, I shouldn't say 98%, but like, it's different than all of the popular romantic books right now, right? So,
no, it really is. And not in a way that is needed, but also I think it has become one of my favorite series. like
Oh,
hands
thank you.
down. And I'm not just saying that because you're on my podcast. I'm saying that because truthfully, like there's certain books that like viscerally evoke emotions in us. And
that hit you.
and I never, I don't always remember the names, don't always remember the plot, but I can remember how it made me feel. 100% can tell you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I do think people I have seen this trend where like if someone just doesn't like a book, they'll like bash it on Instagram or TikTok. And let me just say, just because a book's not for you does not make it a bad book. Like, let's just call a spade a spade.
Well, and it's like, oh, this was badly written. No, it just wasn't written to your style. I don't go read my reviews anymore. I stay the heck away from Goodreads because that's a bad place for authors. But sometimes I get, when you get tagged, and there's always the discussion about getting tagged in negative reviews or whatever. But somebody tagged me in a review that was like in a post, and it was beautiful. It was one like super gushing, 5 stars, love this book. And someone in the comments, I shouldn't have done this, but I like was looking at the comments, and they were like, "It's a shame she didn't work with an editor. This book had so much potential." And I was like, what? Like, where are you even getting that from? You're just like making things up. Like,
I do think everyone wants to be a literary critic.
Well,
I do.
Like, the book was edited. Just because it's not your taste or your style doesn't like. And I was like, and what do you mean? It's a shame she didn't. What? Where are you even getting it from? Like, it was so weird.
What are your sources? Because they're inaccurate.
I guess I know I've made it when people are just making things up about you.
Yes, that is an indication that you have officially made it as a best-selling author.
I'll take this as a compliment, because people just making shit up about you, that is like not like, what?
Well, I do think like, especially when you're an aspiring author, there is like this dream of becoming, I don't know, like a best-selling author, getting that deal. But I guess I'm asking for myself. I'm pretending like there's these people. No, it's me. I'm the person. As someone who wants to become a published author, but very much not in a season where I can dedicate the time I want to it, what like advice would you give me in terms of like one day, publishing one day?
I think like motivation is a lie. Like, it's about discipline, not motivation, right? Like, some days you just don't feel like doing it, but like do it anyways, right? Like, I think there's, to a point of you're not like making yourself feel bad or anything, but I think like there's a lot like, well, I need motivation. I'm like, no, it's not about inspiration or motivation. It's about getting your butt in your chair every day and doing it, right? And I think like, even if when you are working and you have kids and you can't dedicate all your time to it, like that's the hard part about publishing, is you're doing all of this work for potentially nothing, right? Like, and that's the hardest part, to sort of like keep the faith in that this is going to lead to something eventually. And we do a lot of unpaid work with the hope of someday someone's going to recognize it and pay us for it. So I think, you have to really want it, because you will get knocked down over and over and over again. And I think one of the most important things I've learned is rejection is not the end of the world, that every single author has been rejected many, many, many times. And that doesn't mean you're a bad writer. It just means that editor or that whatever was just not the right thing for you. And a no is not a no. It's just like a not yet, right? Like, that means something else is coming. And I always say this, like, if Heart of Night and Fire had sold on submission, then it probably would have gotten some like rinky dink little deal. And then I would have been locked, because publishing contracts, they look at your next book. They have competition clauses. You can't just publish whatever you want to once you have a traditional publishing contract. I might not have decided to self-publish because I would have had this contract, and everything would have changed. Like, I would not be where I am now. Like, absolutely. So like, things happen for a reason sometimes. Like, you just sort of have to keep the faith, and keep writing the next book. I mean, your best marketing is always a good book. Like, authors talk about marketing and et cetera, but like, you cannot market a product that nobody wants. So like, ultimately your book is the most important product, and the most important part of marketing. And people don't want to hear this, but I think like, you need to think about what you want to do with that book before you even write it. Like, do you want to indie publish it? Do you want to trad publish it? Do you want to just put a book into the world just to have a book in the world? Or do you legitimately want to make a career out of this? Like, all of those things should inform your decision on what you're writing. And there's a lot of sort of like disdain for writing to market. And that's selling, but like, no, Like, I disagree. I think if you genuinely want to, yes, there are some books that can break out of the mold. Butcher and Blackbird's a really great example, but that is the exception, not the rule. That, you know, if you want to make a career out of it, like, I think you have to consider all of those things.
I think you have a really interesting position with having a background in marketing. I feel like you have this perspective that not a lot of authors have going in, right?
I am lucky because I know about newsletters. I know about social media. Like, I already knew all of that stuff. Whereas if people come into it and they've never done anything like that, like, that's a lot of things to learn. But I mean, it's not hard. It's just lots of little things, right? But yeah.
Well, and I've also seen this trend of people saying that if you don't certain people shouldn't become authors or can't become authors, right? Like, almost like there needs to be this certain criteria for someone to become an author. And I just find that so inherently false. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, anybody can be an author. It's just,
absolutely.
You have to, and I think, like, though, you have to, like, what are your goals? Like, do you want to work with a big publisher? Do you want to just put a book up on Amazon? Do you want to be a hobby author? Do you want to be a career author? Like, I think it's really important to understand what you want, because that will inform every decision you make along the way. Because you can't be like, oh, I'm writing this weird book that no one's going to like, and it's so crazy and it's so out there, and then be like, no one's buying my book. Well, like, you can't have it both ways, right? So you have to, we are making a product. I know we want to talk about, like, art, and of course it's art, it's, like, close to our hearts, but ultimately you are making a product. And I know some people don't like to think of it that way, but
though, it's kind of funny because I feel like the art comes in the pieces of the book that you're writing. It, like, tropes, themes, I mean, they're all reused. We get our inspiration from other places. Like you said, it feels good to read a book that feels like you're coming home again, right? You're feeling that feeling you felt another book. And that comes with, unfortunately, reusing some similar plot devices, because people like to know what is expected in a story. They usually love giving the happily ever after. Ones that don't always offer that generally aren't that popular.
well, they're not romances then, but, and I think,
no, like, absolutely not. They're usually historical fiction or historical.
And if you enjoy the genre, like, you enjoy those things too. And I think, like, a lot of it is sort of finding, like, what's popular, and then the intersection between what's popular and what resonates with you, right? Like, where does that come together, and how are you going to make that yours? Because that's ultimately what it is, right? Because you can give 10 authors the same concept and they're all going to write 10 different books. So, like, what makes it yours? And I think that's sort of the key.
Well, I think it's also hard to, is you can be a very talented writer. You can be great at it. And like you said, I think it comes down to discipline, but also, like, is this even the right stage? And I think I had this moment, like, I was writing a book. I wrote a whole first draft and I just don't have time. I hate to say it, like, I will write a book one day. I know I will. But there's also, it's important to acknowledge seasons in life.
It absolutely is. And it's important to say to yourself, like, this is just not the right moment for me. And that was, like, I did that for years. I'm like, I'm not ready. I don't have the energy for this. I don't have I just don't have the time. And it was only at the certain point where I'm like, okay, I have time, and now I'm going to make the time in this world, in my life, that I can find this place. And I think there's that too. Like, there's finding that, like, oh, when you have a 2-year-old, like, it's, I don't know how people do it with little kids like that.
Well,
like,
we're still thinking about adding to our family. And I had this moment, though, where I can still read a lot. I mean, that's very accessible when you're nursing. But there's this point where I was getting really discouraged because I was writing a ton and I was staying up late to do that. But then I wasn't able to read as much because I only get so much time per day because I'm with my kids all day, every day. And I was beating myself up, like, you should be able to do this. And then I took a step back and I'm like, wait, should I be able to do this? Is this really the time where I need to have my author career? Or can I focus on building my bookstagram, enjoying reading, doing things that I can do, like a podcast or things that bring me joy? And I'll get to that eventually. I'm not going to lose my ability as a writer because I'm raising little babies.
And I think people get so, like, oh my God, I'm 32 years old. And I'm like, listen, I was in my 40s when I started. When I started, I was in my 40s. Like, it is never too late. Like,
no,
this is like my 5th career. Like, it is never too late, like, to be what you might have been. Like, it's just,
I think I've already had like 4 careers, if I'm being honest. I had a bachelor's in communications and I did a lot of writing for that. And Then
I was an engineer. I was an engineer. That was my first, like, that's where I started.
I initially wanted to be in something or math or science. I actually took like all the chemistry and calculus and all the really difficult classes and decided to go into communications. And then I was a bartender for a while. Then I was a special ed parapro. Then I was a counselor. I'm actually a therapist, a licensed therapist. I have my master's in counseling. And now I'm a stay-at-home mom doing a bookish podcast. And
no, it's
flying to write
it's
one
never
day.
too late, especially writing. Like, God, it's really never too late. It's like, yeah, maybe you can't be an actor or model when you hit a certain age, but you can certainly still be an authur. But
after I became a mom, I'm like, I think bikinis are out for me. It's not going to happen ever again, and it's fine.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
No kidding.
But yeah, I don't know. I think there's sort of like, finding that, like, what is reasonable for me to do at this stage in my life versus like, okay, at some point I'm just going to have to push through and get this done if I honestly want to make this happen. And I think, like for me, I think I came to it when I was ready, and I was ready. I sat down, and I think I've finished book number 16 this year. Like you just sat down and by the end of this year, 10 of them will be published, right? I think I can't count anymore, but like I think you come to things when you're ready also.
I think so too. And, I have this discussion with my husband a lot because he's just, he's so supportive, and he'll be like, oh, but you're such a great writer. Like, it can't be like, you just do it. And I do have this thing where I don't want to do it unless I'm doing it well. And I just don't think I have the capacity to do much well right now, to be honest.
Yeah.
Beyond what I'm already doing. And even that, I'm doing it okay.
You're just like,
it's a tough season. And I mean, you've been there, you've done it. It's just, I think my 40s will be a great time when my kids are more independent.
I don't miss it when I'm like, see little people with babies and kids. I'm like, I don't miss that at all.
It's,
I'm sure some other people do.
I want to say I love it. I do love parts of it. I think I love how inquisitive they are. I will say the tantrums are plentiful. My kids are 19 months apart, and they're
just that age.
Yeah, my husband works a ton, and there's some days I'm sitting there and I'm just like, oh,
and that's motherhood. Like, of course you love them and you love being a mom,
Absolutely.
But like sometimes you're just like, oh my God. Like, sometimes I joke, I'm like, I'd just like to love to have my own apartment somewhere where I could just go every once in a while.
Right. Well, and that's really what this all kind of was born out of. Was I was sitting there having 2 under 2, and I'm like, I have nothing that I do that I'm very educated, but yet I'm just staring at a wall like, oh my God, like I need something.
I think that's fair. Like, I always worked. Like I mean, we get a year of mat leave in Canada, so I had that, but I was never stay-at-home mom. So like I always had like a thing, but like I don't know, just I feel like COVID changed like opinion, like just sort of changed a lot of things. And I realized what I wanted and what I didn't want. I knew I did not want to go back to the office. Like that was when they tried to make us go back to the office. I'm like, yeah, I'm done. They're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, no, I meant it when I said I wasn't coming back to the office. Like, I know you all thought I was kidding, but I definitely was not. But
well, I had my first child in December of 2020. And first of all, if you think about the timing, I had we decided to have a child when it was only 2 weeks, right? Just it was gonna be a 2-week thing, right. And I was like, oh, whatever, this will all be over by the time this baby's in the world, and it was not.
Sure wasn't.
No, it wasn't. But I think COVID, in some ways, really shifted my perspective on a lot of things, and
yeah, absolutely,
it changed the game for us. Well, first of all, I had horrible postpartum anxiety. So like going back to work was just like, I was like, I can't even conceptualize this. I can't leave this baby. It can't survive without me. I will say I'm more balanced, especially after my second. I was like, all right, someone got him. You got him. We're good. Like being a first time mom is so hard.
It is. Yeah. It's a lot. You're just like, it's overwhelming. And yeah,
absolutely.
No,
but I will say, just seeing you do this as a mom, as someone who had other careers, other lives, I mean, it's just amazing to see you do this, and it's truly inspiring.
It's all possible. I just, I think, you have to have like a tough skin and not even like for rejection, just like there's a lot of ups and downs. Like one day, it'll be horrible. And then the next day you'll get the best news of your life, right? Like it's crazy. Like, the wildest thing about being an author is every day you could get an email in your inbox that can change your entire life, which is
good
like
or bad, right?
Right? Like it's so crazy. And like I was at Book Bonanza earlier this month in Texas, and like somebody came up to my table and told me my book was a 6 out of 10, and she really hoped the series would get a lot better. No offense. I was like, I
love that. No offense.
Yeah.
Don't take any.
I don't mean any offense by that. And I was like, I had to clarify. I was like 6, like, was she talking about spice or like, no, she meant like literally 6 out of 10. And she walks away, and my assistant and I looked at each other. I'm like, did that just happen? But then the next day someone messages me and they're like, I was in a bookstore and I organically overheard someone gushing about your book. And I'm like, okay, see, this is the balance, right? Like this is, one day it's like, okay, someone comes and kicks you in the teeth, and the next day you're getting like the coolest news. So it's,
and don't you think, though, if you would have maybe done this at 20 years old, you wouldn't necessarily be able to have that resolve or that thick skin? Maybe, I don't know you as a person, right? So obviously you might have been
I
awesome.
Definitely, I couldn't have. I'm amazed at like some of these very young people and who can do this. And there is a correlation in like traditional publishing of people who get deals really big deals really young who don't make it. There is actually like studies on that, because it's so much pressure when you are that young. And it's hard to keep up. And like, I don't know, I think a lot of people need to like have a lot of jobs and figure out what they want to do with their lives. But yeah,
and I think that's so true, because in my 30s, there's sometimes I'd have that regret, like, oh man, I just did all this to be, and I don't want to denounce being a stay-at-home mom, because I find a lot of value in it. I obviously have felt very called to do it. It was a choice.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have like, you're paying your student loans, because in America, man, is education expensive. And you're just like, wow, I did all this to really not need to. But no, I did all this because it made me the person I am today. Right. And I wouldn't have the same frame of reference.
And it's only like a little chunk of your like your adult life, right? Like it feels sometimes like this is it. Well, no, it's not. Like 10 years is nothing when you think about it, right? Like,
no,
there's always time later. And yeah, I don't know. It was very nice when I was able to, I left my job that I was working at the beginning of 2023. I don't know.
The years start all blurring together after 2020, if I'm being honest.
2023, beginning of 23. And I worked for 6 months for Dabble Writer. They do like writing software that's sort of like a competitor to Scrivener. And I worked for them for 6 months, and then they laid me off. And I was like, oh God, gave up my like good paying government job for this. But then my husband, he was like, you keep dancing around this book, like writing thing. Like by then I had a couple books out and things were sort of doing okay. And he's like, just try it. Just like, don't get another job and try it. And I was like, okay, I guess I could try it. And then it turned out to be the right move. Because cool. Then I published Trial that fall, and before long I was making more money than I was ever before. So
well, and I think that there is something to be said about putting your full self into something and actually pursuing something fully, rather than just half in, half out.
Endless duties and endless tasks. Like there are so many things that you don't even realize till you get into it. And I mean, I have a list a mile long every single day, and to say I get it all done, I know, but I mean, I have an assistant now, so that makes a big difference. But yeah, it does. It makes a big difference. And like, we were obviously fortunate in that we could just live, he made enough money that we could live off of it for just his salary for a little while. And so we were lucky in that regard. But yeah, I think it helped. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything before we wrap up that we have to look forward to other than obviously book 4? And so how do you say Ouranos? Am I saying that right?
I say it what do I say? Ouranos. Yeah, I say Artefacts of Ouranos. It's actually Greek for sky, and it's because I got it because of the aurora and the sun powers of the like 2 main courts. I wanted something to do with the sky.
Well, and then there's a lightning too for heart. Yeah, so I guess it all kind of
sometimes I do these things on purpose.
Or sometimes it all just works out, right?
Someone messaged me the other day and they're like, you have a lot of Turkish names in your stories. Is that on purpose? And I was like, no, it wasn't. I'm like, I don't know. All the attributes in the first book are all named after sun or light.
Where did you come up with lore?
I don't know. That one just popped in my head. Sometimes the character name just pops in my head, and I know immediately that's the right one. And that one with her, instantly she was just Laura. I don't know why that is. Just that one was immediate. Like Zarya had many other names. I don't know. That one I changed a lot. Nadir I took a while to figure out, because like you want to have. I joke with some of my author friends were like hot names, like hot guy names. Like
yeah, he can't be named something that's not.
There's like certain names
a
like,
shadow daddy worthy.
That's a hot guy. Like I don't know, right? Like the hot guy name.
I would say so.
Yeah, I think so. We have a little like a Discord channel. We're like hot or not. And I'm like, what do you think of this name?
So I never used Discord before I got on Bookstagram, and then everyone's like, you should make a book club. So I made a Discord, and man, was it a learning curve. But it's literally my favorite thing now. Yeah, it's my favorite.
Super fun. Yeah, it's good.
So is there anything else that we have to look forward to?
Yeah. So my rom-com next year will be the one that I'm very excited about. It's called Not Suitable for Work, although we're talking about changing to Not Safe for Work, but I think I'm going to argue with that one. Not Suitable for Work. It is based on like my time when I was an engineer as a woman of color in a very male-dominated industry, and all the crazy, stupid things that people said. So basically, like I actually think this is my best book. I say that now, but I also haven't looked at it in 2 years because
I'm excited to read it.
A lot of stuff has happened in between. But like, yeah, the premise is basically like Tris, who's the main character, she's like working in a job as an engineer, and she gets picked for this like leadership retreat in Hawaii. Two people from her office get picked, and she finds out she's like the diversity pick, and she gets all mad, and they're like blah blah, and she's like, well, I'm taking the free trip to Hawaii, so like fuck you. So she goes and she's like, I want a first class seat, and I first class airline ticket, and I want a suite, and they're like, okay, fine. So she has it, and then the other person who goes with her is the like boss's son and her nemesis. And then when they get to Hawaii, they find out there's only one room, and you know how things go. And then it's like
the one bed trope in a rom-com is chef's kiss. Love it.
One room in this case, but it ends up being one bed. And then they like go through this like team building exercises, and it's so much fun. It's like an irreverent look at like corporate life and like casual racism and sexism, but like in a fun way.
But unpacking in a way that's like digestible and fun. Yeah. And I cannot wait to read this. Like it sounds so fun.
You know, like Mindy Kaling, she does a really good job of sort of making a statement, but making it like kind of light and funny at the same time, like sort of irreverent. And I think that's sort of the vibe it is. And I'm very excited about that one. So yeah, so there will actually be 3 rom-coms coming eventually. So that'll be the next one for sure next year. And then I don't know, I have to give my option to Forever, who's my Artefacts publisher. They get like first look at whatever my next adult fantasy is. And I just haven't had time to propose anything to them yet because I have to finish Nightfire first. But I don't know what's going to come next after that.
Maybe a dark romance under another name.
Yeah, I have some ideas. And actually Forever has been picking up a few dark romances also. But I don't know if they're as dark as I would like to go. Because I think I was talking with the publisher, like the head of Grand Central, who is the parent company to Forever, and he was like, the problem is like some places don't want to carry, like Walmart and Target and stuff don't want to carry books like Haunting Adeline because it's too, right, like it can be challenging to get like those kinds of books onto shelves and like, you know, in a right-wing America. So like, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I can kind of see that. But anyways, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, no, for sure something fantasy romance next. I don't know. I have lots of ideas. I have many ideas of what I want to write next, but we'll see.
Well, I'm so excited. And I'm so excited for your rom-com next year. Yeah, I will be sure to be like first in line to buy that.
I think there's a good like overlap of readers who like both romantasy and rom-com. So I think that'll hopefully be a good transition. And yeah, I'm excited. I found out who the cover artist is. I cannot wait to see what cover I'm excited because this will be the first sort of like ground up book. Like it was different, like having a series acquired is mid series is very different than like having it starting from scratch with them. So I'm excited for the whole process with them and what that will be like.
Well, it's so exciting. And thank you so much again for coming on this podcast and chatting with me. I really enjoyed our conversation so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you all for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, guys.